Okay, welcome back to Gary's Economics. Today we are going to talk about how to make money. All right, so this is one of the questions, well, not just one of the questions, the question by a million miles which I get asked most on the channel, and I also get asked this question a lot in real life, so I wanted to address it. And I got asked this question twice recently in person, which is I went to a friend of mine's 50th birthday party, and his nephew was there. And we were standing outside this pub, and he said to me, "Oh, you know, you're that guy, what's your channel? You know, what do I do? What do I do? How do I get rich?" And I had another friend of mine, a Japanese guy, come around to my house, and we were cooking dinner. And he said, "I want to ask you, like, you know, you've got a lot of money, can you tell me how to get rich?" And it's a tricky one, right? Because I was thinking when this second guy asked me, if you came to me and said, you know, how do I get hench? I would say, go to the gym every day. If you said to me, you know, how do I get my English better? I would say, you know, speak English every day. If you say, how do I learn Japanese? I'll tell you what textbooks to buy. But the truth of the matter is, what I said to this guy, he said, "Can I ask you one question?" I said, "Yeah, go on." He said, "How do I get rich?" I said to him, "Ask another question." Because the truth is, this is the one thing which it is almost impossible to safely do as a young person nowadays. There's basically one really, really good method for getting rich in today's society. It's almost foolproof. Have a rich dad. If you failed that one, try again. Because, okay, so obviously people ask me this question because I'm a rich person. I've been very open about that. I talk about this on the channel. I made my money working as a trader. I was a very good trader. I was a very successful trader. I wasn't a professional trader for a long time. I worked as a trader from 2008 till 2014. I made a lot of money, especially in 2011, but also a couple of years around that. If you could get a job as a professional trader, it's an extremely well-paid job, and you will become a relatively rich person. Basically, nobody not from a rich background becomes a trader nowadays. It's almost impossible to get that job. And I got that job partially because I was a very good student. You know, I was a very talented maths student. I got very good grades. I got into a very good university, and I got very good grades at that university. But even on top of that, I needed to win like a national card game to get that job. And I think that shows you, you know, this story is in my book. If you want, you can read my book, and it tells you about this. It's almost impossible for ordinary people to get that job nowadays. So unless you are like a extremely unbelievably talented mathematician, in which case, you know, go and study maths or economics at Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, and try and get a job as a trader. This is just not a route that is open to you. You know, the trading floor has almost nobody from a poor ordinary background. Almost everybody is from a rich background. So if you come to me from an ordinary background, say, how do I get rich? I can't really say to you, do what I did, because it's almost impossible for you to do that. So then you might say, okay, well, you know, maybe I can't get a job as a trader, but you know, you still trade personally. And I do still trade personally, and I've got a very good track record trading personally. I have made quite a lot of money trading personally since I quit trading. So you might say, well, teach me how to trade. So for this, and I've mentioned this a couple of times before on the channel, I have a couple of times tried to help friends get involved in trading. And this happened particularly at the beginning of COVID. So I sort of started doing my public work at the beginning of COVID in 2020. And one of the big things that I said when I came out publicly was that house prices will go up a lot because of COVID, because rich people accumulate a lot of money during COVID. You can go and look at my early videos, How the Rich Get Rich from COVID-19, where I talk about exactly this. And some of my friends who were trying to buy houses, had maybe 50, 60 grand saved up, came to me saying, "Listen, I'm worried. You said house prices will go up. I don't have a big enough deposit yet. I can't buy a house. What can I do?" And at that time, at the beginning of COVID, I was making some really big bets. In particular, I had a really big bet that the gold price would go up. And I thought the gold price would go up. It has come up a lot. I thought house prices would go up. They have come up a lot. And actually, like, quite a good way to hedge your exposure to rising house prices is to buy other assets like gold. So I said to my friends, okay, well, you can't buy a house yet, but what you can do is you can buy gold. I had a massive trade on that the gold price would go up. So I felt quite comfortable recommending to them to do the same thing that I was doing. And yeah, it was a good trade recommendation. Gold price went up a lot, has gone up a lot since. And the gold price went up about 20% not long after that recommendation. And then it came down sort of 5%. And sort of when this happened about 9 months later, both my friends called me up and they said, you know, what do we do? You know, they called me up individually, you know, what do I do? And I said, well, you know, it's gone up 20% and it's down 5%. So you still up a lot of money, like just don't do anything. Just sit, wait, you know, if you want, you can buy a little bit more on this dip. And they both said, you don't understand, like I'm out, like I'm wiped out, like I've lost all my money. And I was confused, like how could you have lost money? It's up 15% since I told you to buy it. And they both did basically the same thing, which was, they didn't do anything when I said buy it, because at the time it looked terrible because the price is really low. It went up 5% and they thought, oh damn, I should have bought it. It went up another 5% and they thought, oh man, I really should have bought it, I'm gonna buy now. So straight away they missed the first 10%. Goes up another 5% and they make a little bit more and they're like, okay, great, I made some money, they buy a little bit more. Goes up another 5% and then they both just basically went totally insane and it didn't say anything to me. They bought a ton more gold, they bought silver, they bought platinum, they bought palladium, they bought Bitcoin, they were buying Tesla. Not telling me any of this stuff basically. Because they'd made a little bit of money trading on my recommendation, they basically became sort of convinced that they themselves were really good traders and they did a load of stuff which I didn't tell them to do and they bought loads basically and then it came down and they lost a ton of money. So this is why I don't try and teach people to trade basically. You know, the few times I've given friends trading recommendations, most of the time they manage to lose a ton of money because trading's hard. And you know, I make money as a trader and every now and again I do say my positions on the channel. But I was a professional trader for 6 years and I've been looking at the economy for 20 years and you know, I have an extremely good track record as a professional trader, an extremely good track record as a personal trader. I don't think this is a thing which I can teach you to do. You know what I mean? You know, it's a bit like going and asking Usain Bolt, how can I win the Olympics? You know, like maybe train for 20 years. Yeah, I just don't think that it's, I don't think it would be responsible. I think it'd be super dangerous. You know, I know that trading has become super popular for young men on the internet and you see them on Instagram showing off their Lamborghinis. I've come out and, you know, very aggressively said I think crypto trading is dangerous and day trading is dangerous and FX trading is dangerous. And for that reason, I get, you know, young men emailing me all the time telling me they've lost all their money. FX trading, crypto trading. And a lot of the time when they send me those emails, they say, but don't worry, I've figured it out now. And from here I'm going to make money. And it's difficult to read those emails. Listen, trading is gambling. Trading is gambling. If you go on, I trade on IG Index, which is a spread betting platform. It says there on the front page, like 75% of accounts lose money. I'm not losing money. And there's professionals on there like me that are not losing money. And there's an old saying, if you don't know who the idiot is at the poker table, you're the idiot. Listen, professional traders like me, if you go out, you're trading against me, you know, and it's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing for ordinary people to do, and it's. I think we've created this situation now where we have basically convinced young people, especially young men, that the only way to be of value in society is to make a lot of money. And we've created a situation where all of the legitimate paths to getting rich are basically blocked, and it's almost impossible to become rich nowadays. Realistically, for the younger generation, if you're working, you've already lost, basically. It's almost impossible to get rich through your work. The only way to get rich nowadays is to inherit money from your parents. But often these inheritances are invisible. So, you know, I went to a grammar school, but I also went to a comprehensive school, and I've got friends from different kinds of financial backgrounds. People from poorer families, it's basically impossible to buy property. People from richer families, what happens is the parents will gift them £100,000, £200,000, maybe £500,000 to buy property. People from poor backgrounds don't realise that that's happened behind the scenes. So they see other people from different families buying properties and they People don't tend to go and say, you know, the reason I bought a property is because my mum gave me £500,000. But that is what is happening. Then people from poorer backgrounds see these guys buying property and they think, what are they doing that I'm doing wrong? And the thing that you're doing wrong if you're poor is you had the wrong parents. You shouldn't have done that. You should have had the right parents. This is the world that we live in nowadays. We live in a world in which the only way to get rich is to have rich parents. And yet we tell young people, if you are poor, you are a failure, you are a loser, it is your fault. And this is just absolutely devastating for the mental health of young people. So what I want to say is, listen, you live in a rigged game. You and I live in a rigged game. It is almost impossible to get rich if your parents are not rich. So what I want you to do is to accept that. The game is rigged. And to stop judging yourself and other people based on financial outcomes, when financial outcomes are increasingly nothing to do with how smart you are, how hard you work, what job you do. You know, this is the world that we live in. But I think what obfuscates this a little bit is the fact that there is social mobility on like the micro scale. So like the people who come from the same financial background as you, if you work harder than them and get a better job, you will be able to get slightly better off than them. But you will never be able to jump up to the level of somebody whose parents are richer. So that's what it is. So at the same time, you know, especially if you're poor, you do have to work really hard and you do have to try and study the right subjects. You do have to try and get the right job because increasingly poor people are put in this situation where otherwise you'll become like homeless and completely impoverished. So you have this kind of small scale competitiveness, but there's no macro competitiveness. So you're forced to compete with other people who are poor, but you have no way of competing with people who are born richer. And it's a horrible game. It's a horrible game. It's a horrible game. So I think you need to understand that this is the world that you've been put in. They want you to fight each other to be rich, but it's impossible to be rich because the rich are taking everything. So while you are sort of being convinced to fight each other and obsess about being a failure and obsess about making money, the game is being rigged such that you and the middle classes are basically being robbed blind and the government is being robbed blind. And my concerns are, one, devastating for the mental health of young people, but two, it's like really, really deeply depoliticizing. I think if you can convince ordinary young people to focus only on their specific bank balances, whilst the game is rigged so that it's very easy for the rich to rob the poor, then the poor will never unite and stop that theft, basically. So this is the world we're living in, and this is the thing which I worry about a lot at the moment, which is how do we stop the systemized robbing of the poor when the poor have been really trained to play the game very individualistically and to not work together. And I think if I want to send one message, it is that the game is set up in a way that you are being robbed of your wealth and there's very little you can do as an individual to stop that. But no matter how much they rob you of your wealth, they can't rob you of your dignity. And it's not your fault that you live increasingly in poverty. The game is being set up such that the majority of this country increasingly will live in poverty. But you can realise that that's not failing on you as an individual. That is the result of a rotten system. It is the result of a rotten system. And I think people can deal with poverty. I know poverty is not easy, but you know, I grew up in poverty and it was hard. But what affected me in many ways more than the poverty was the judgment. So don't judge yourself harshly and don't judge other people harshly because it's the system that's broken. And you should be proud of the work that you do and you should be proud of what you do to support yourself and to support your family and to support the people around you. Because I think once we manage to shake off this judgment and this idea that it's our fault, then we can start being proud of ourselves and each other and seeing the game for what it really is, which is a broken game that we have to fix together. So there's only two ways to be rich in this world that we live in. Be born rich or change the rules. And we can only change the rules together. So I'm going to try to change the rules, tax the rich more, tax you less. move us back into an economy where ordinary people like my parents, like your parents, can achieve financial security and even wealth by hard work. But the only way to do that is to work together to change the system. So how do you get rich? You get rich by working together. I'm going to try and do that, and I hope you join me. Good luck. Thank you.